How's it going, Jets fans? My name is Alex, my co-host here, Ryan Moran, and today we want to discuss two positions that the Jets may want to use or at least go after some more support. If you're Joe Douglas, you're always looking for more talent, always looking for the waiver wire, maybe player for player trade or trading for some draft capital or scouting other players' practice squads. You're always looking for more players who can compete. But we want to discuss two positions that maybe could use a little bit more help and maybe could use a little bit more depth, just competition on the back end. The Jets, I was thinking about it. I was like, what two positions could we talk about? And I was like, it's kind of difficult. They have depth at quarterback. They have depth at receiver. They have depth at offensive guard. They have depth at running back, at defensive line, at cornerback. Like they've got good players pretty much across the board, at least a lot of youth that has a lot of potential. And that's kind of where you want to be if you're a team that's going into the third year of a rebuild, or the second year of a rebuild. And you're not sure exactly what's going to happen here, but you have a lot of talented players on this roster because I could not think of that many positions. And I think the two that we came up with an honorable mention of a third was obviously the offensive tackle spot, but that really only happened because Mekhi Becton went down. So notable to talk about. We'll discuss kind of the guys behind Dwayne Brown and George Fant. But then you have maybe the linebacker core behind CJ Mosley. Do we trust Quincy Williams? Do we trust Nazrul Dean, Jamian Sherwood, Quan Alexander? Like, how much faith do we have in these guys? Definitely a lot of depth, but maybe not a lot of great depth. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to offer this year, but we'll discuss their styles of play and what they bring to the table. And then, of course, the free safety position where you have Jordan Whitehead as your prime free agent signing. And then you got Ashton Davis and LaMarcus Joyner back there, two guys who I don't trust, to say it lightly. But, Ryan, before we dive into these position groupings, how we're feeling about them moving forward. How you do tonight, my friend?
I'm doing great, Alex. Definitely a worthwhile discussion when you just look at the fact that the Jets still have a couple positions that while this offseason went great, I mean it's been a build by Joe Douglas the last 2-3 years, and the depth of the roster is certainly better. You really hit on a lot of positions: defensive line, interior offensive line, especially in the trenches. Obviously, I mean they've definitely got a ton of guys that they can feel good about, but there's still really one starting position, obviously, like you said, safety. And then really, you look at the depth across the roster. This thing is about Zach Wilson. I mean, obviously everybody knows that. And I think the offense, the starting offense and the depth at most of the positions you can feel good about, but it really just comes back to the offensive tackle position. Like you said, with Mekhi Becton's injury, not even just him. I mean, George Fant's coming off of an injury. In recent weeks, I mean, we've seen both Connor McDermott and Chuma Edoga go down. So I think that's one position, come final cutdowns, if, a player gets released or becomes available through a trade, like you said, I could definitely see JD looking to, upgrade the depth of tackle and really, make Max Mitchell's rookie year a little bit easier.
Absolutely. So, let's discuss linebacker first, just so we can kind of get an idea what's going on here. Of course, you got CJ Mosley as your true and tried starting LB1, but the LB2 position, we saw Quincy Williams last year, instantly got in the doghouse when he had that big hit on Jalen Hurts, which in my opinion was totally that was so irresponsible. That was such a stupid move from Quincy Williams. He was like, I didn't realize how far out of that I was out of bounds. I'm like, bro, he stopped running. Like he was just standing there. Like he's a freaking quarterback in preseason, just standing there, he's barely moving, and you absolutely laid your shoulder into this man's jawline. Like you couldn't have been stupider in that moment. So, aside from that, he's a pretty aggressive player. Of course, he's Quinn Williams' brother. There's some chemistry on the defensive side, but there is reason to believe that he's your LB2 starting right now. He got the start with the first team offense, or rather defense. And he's physical. He has good speed. He has sideline to sideline speed. Maybe his IQ is missing at some points. Maybe he's not a good coverage linebacker. But I'd say that he's probably the starter right now. What are your thoughts on Quincy Williams? And do you think that he's got this position locked up, or do you think maybe there's a little bit more competition that needs to happen?
I think, the one player who I really look at in particular that could, give him a run for his money is Quan Alexander, of course. And I think it's probably just a matter of time before he really does cut into his snaps a little bit. I mean, Quincy's frustrating because you said it. I mean, the athletic ability, the speed, physicality to his game, all those elements are there, but it's just at this point, it's, lack of control in pursuit. I mean, he can really make his presence felt, or he can completely whiff on a play and really give an offense, extra life. And to me, that's, definitely the main concern. I think the linebacker position in general right now, the reason I can't really see them adding is just because of, like you said, the depth is so strong, after the top 2-3 guys. I mean, with Natural Dean, Sherwood, Marcel Harris is listed as a starter right now on this football team. And, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. You have Delshon Phillips, who's a core special teamer. DQ Thomas is an undrafted free agent who, they definitely invested some, guaranteed money into. So there's a lot of players there. And I agree with you. It's definitely one of the bigger starting concerns opposite CJ, but I'm not so sure with the amount of depth that they have rounding out the group if it necessarily makes sense this time.
Yeah, I mean that's totally reasonable. And at the end of the day, you're kind of expecting someone to emerge here. You have 2 preseason games left. Barring injury, I think that you're right. Quan Alexander could give him a run for his money. Last year with the New Orleans Saints, he played in 535 total snaps. He was god awful as a run defender, like unbelievably bad. 19% missed tackle rate. This is the thing with Quan Alexander, right? Like he's good in coverage. He's a good coverage linebacker, but against the run, he's borderline useless. Like he's athletic. He looks strong. He's just borderline useless as a run defender. He misses a ton of tackles. This has been an issue his entire career. 17.8% missed tackle average year over year since 2015. That's your biggest concern with Quan is like, can he hold up in run defense? Is he going to be a liability? And that's where it comes into play. Like, is Quincy Williams that bad of a coverage linebacker where you are willing to sacrifice your run defense at the LB2 position for better pass defense? Like, that's kind of the argument you have to make. And I don't think Quincy Williams is the worst coverage linebacker in the world. Can he be competent? Can he be average? Maybe. That's the big question. I think you give him the chance because he's a better run defender than Quan Alexander is. If he can get to being just a competent coverage linebacker, then you have a much better player long term, in my opinion, especially because he's young. But that's the question. Like, would you be willing to kind of go with the line of thought that you would prefer the pass coverage or would you prefer the run defense? What do you think about that?
No, it's a great point. I think the, likelihood of it really just being a rotation where, they have specific, assignments and down and distances in which they play situations, whether it's against the run or like you're saying on third down, 2-minute situations, passing situations. I think that's probably what's most realistic, I would say at this point in time until proven otherwise. If one guy really, separates from the other, I think you're really looking at, a mix of, like you said, Quincy and Quan, depending on really whatever, likelihood the offense is either going to throw or run.
Yeah, situational play makes the most sense. I do agree with that. But looking at free safety, you got Jordan Whitehead, you got Ashton Davis, and you got LaMarcus Joyner. Joyner, older, a little bit injury prone at this point. Do I trust him? No, he does not have that sideline to sideline range that he once did. He's definitely fallen off quite a lot over the past couple seasons. Currently, he is 31 years old. He's almost 32 years old. He barely played last season, played in 9 snaps and then went down with the injury, but he played, 670 snaps in 2020. Coverage grades have fallen off. His best season came back in 2017 with the LA Rams. I guess maybe they were St. Louis back then. I guess it says they're LA. I don't remember exactly when they transitioned over, but he's a good tackler, always has been. Decent run defender, fallen off the last couple seasons, but his days as a good coverage safety are well behind him. Like he is definitely not where he once was. I would not be surprised if they cut him at the roster cuts deadline this year. I think that he's very much on the fringe. Ashton Davis, fast, awful football player. I personally think he'd be much better in a track and field situation, but he's very quick, very fast, but he's not a good tackler. He takes terrible angles. He's rather weak, when you actually look at, he's very extreme. The guy's like a super athlete, but he's just not a good defender. I could see him. He should have been like a wide receiver or something, like a slot receiver. He would have been an absolute burner as a receiver. But I don't think that he's going to make much of an impact as your free safety. He's got the sideline to sideline range, but his football IQ is not great. And he's, like I said before, in run defense, he's basically non-existent. So you're not really getting any value from him there. I could definitely see them going out and trying to maybe go after a free agent signing, look at the waiver wire, look at the practice squads. I mean, look, you're not getting that much value, but teams always end up cutting a couple of valuable pieces to trim it down to 53. So there will be a couple safeties on the board that may be worthwhile. What is your thoughts about that free safety spot and kind of, the depth behind Jordan Whitehead definitely is a bit thin.
I think it's arguably the biggest starting concern on either side of the ball right now. And I mean, the other night it was Will Parks who filled in. Joyner, the main thing with him, and he probably is the best free safety that they have, but he just hasn't been available. Like you said, I mean, played in a game last year. He's turning 32 shortly. And, I feel like it's been about 2 weeks now. I don't know to be exact, but it's in that ballpark of just him not missing practice, obviously not playing in the preseason game. And while he has worked with the starters predominantly when he's been out there, I mean, he just hasn't been available. And to me, that's why it is one of the biggest concerns right now. And why I think come final cutdowns, if, a good free safety does shake loose, that the Jets would definitely make a play.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the free agent market right now, you got Landon Collins, more of a strong safety, Deshaun Gibson, free safety, you got Nate Ebner, Curtis Riley. Curtis Riley, honestly, Darian Thompson, third round pick from the Giants a couple years ago, spent time with Dallas. Maybe he's a guy that you look at. Curtis Riley spent time with the Raiders. I used to call him a no angle Riley because this dude literally took the worst angles in the history of this free safety position. I have never seen anyone pick angles worse than him. The math just goes right out his other ear. It's unbelievable. So I would not go in the direction of Curtis Riley. But Darian Thompson has some nice plays with Dallas. He's a hard hitting free safety. You can come up and play the run. Has had some issues with injuries in the past. Decent backup. So maybe he's a guy you look at in free agency, super cheap, probably vet minimum at this point. But the other position we have here is offensive tackle. You got Dwayne Brown, you got Mekhi Becton out for the year. You got George Fant, but behind them, Max Mitchell, Chuma Adoga, and Connor McDermott. Those guys are unreliable, to say the least. Max Mitchell is just too fresh. He's fresh blood. He's a little bit undersized, in my opinion. You need kind of more established vets at the backup spot. You need the Morgan Moses. That's the best backup the Jets probably have had at tackle in like a decade. Morgan Moses, right? But Connor McDermott kind of sucks. Chuma Adoga kind of sucks. They've been getting absolutely tossed in practice, and put in that quarterback position in a bit of a tumultuous spot. But there are going to be veteran offensive tackles. Like you have Darrell Williams, who's still looking for a job, but he probably wants a starting position. He's probably waiting for someone to get injured, to be honest with you. Kind of like the Mekhi Becton situation, but he kind of also plays better at guard. So I don't necessarily think that he would be a tackle option. But if you're looking at options available right now, Nate Solder, wouldn't touch him with a 25-foot ball. I think he's retired, actually. Brian Beluga, Eric Fisher. I guess Darrell Williams is listed as a right tackle, but can play guard as well. Zach Banner, Marcus Cannon, a lot of older guys. Mike Remmers is a decent backup, actually. Brandon Shell, Bobby Massey, Jason Peters. He's 40 years old. Good God. Jason Peters is such a good player for being 40 years old, by the way. I could not believe that guy is 40 and the way he's been playing the last couple of years. Unbelievable. But, there's some good veteran guys. I mean, look, you're looking for a cheap option. I think Mike Remmers actually kind of fits the bill. Played with Kansas City last year. I think he played in the Super Bowl, actually. So, or the game before. Yeah, he played. Did Mike Remmers start in the Super Bowl? Am I mistaken? That's kind of why Patrick Mahomes got his ass kicked, because the offensive line just looked terrible.
He might have. I can't remember exactly, but they obviously revamped their entire offensive line that offseason. So,
who they got? Orlando Brown, right?
Yes.
Orlando Brown, yeah. So, man, if you look at the postseason for Mike Remmers, I can't even figure out, did he even play last year? I don't know. Anyway, he's a guy that you could look at. There's going to be roster cuts, right? Like there is options available in a couple weeks here. But what are your thoughts on this offensive tackle depth? I personally am not okay with it. I think that Max Mitchell's too far away from being a good player, or at least competent, to rely on right now. More of a right tackle anyway. If something happens to any of those guys, whoever's playing quarterback is in deep doo-doo. That's kind of how I feel.
For sure. I mean, to me, and I think most Jet fans feel the same way, it's a major concern. I mean, it's all about the growth of Zach Wilson, and you have to be prepared for the worst case scenario. I mean, that's Joe Douglas's job as the general manager. And I think, it's probably going to be a top priority in a couple of weeks. Like you said, when final cutdowns occur and, players do become available, I think this is one of the top positions you could really expect, the Jets to really add at. Obviously you have George Fant, Dwayne Brown, Max Mitchell, but the Becton injury obviously put a real, hurting on things, and losing Chuma Adoga and Connor McDermott recently. You've seen Grant Herman's working with the starting unit, who was on the practice squad last year. I mean, it's been just such a, it's really been a disaster. I mean, so many guys flown in and out. They've had no continuity, and Michael Ford spoke on in his press conference today. I mean, it's going to be really important for that, front five now that it's established, and hopefully they can stay healthy, to really get that synergy intact and be ready to go for the Ravens game. So to me, it's, that third offensive tackle position, just because it's all about Zach Wilson, I think it probably is even a bigger concern than the starting free safety and linebacker positions, just because you want to make sure that as much talent, starting talent and backup talent is in place for Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, once he returns, I think week 1 or week 2, probably he'll make a return. Probably week 2 if I had to guess, or week 3. But yeah, they need to have that offensive line situated. I trust left guard and Laken Tomlinson. I trust Elijah Vera Tucker. I like, Connor McGovern's good enough. He's not great. He's good, but the tackle spots definitely are solid, barring injury, and that's the big question mark. Is like, can they stay healthy? Dwayne Brown has a pretty good career of reliability, so I'm pretty optimistic about him. But Fant has had his issues here and there. Was dealing with an injury a couple weeks ago, but he's back and seemingly doing well now. But I'm excited, man. This is a team that has a lot of strength. They don't have many positions that lack depth. Their starting teams are good on paper. I think it just comes down to execution and getting some of these guys developmental time. Like Zach Wilson's got to be on the field. They are extremely lucky he dodged such a big injury. They need him developing. They need him growing. And that's just the reality of the situation. But guys, I'd love to hear your perspective on these positions. Are there any spots that you think may need some support? Positions that maybe Joe Douglas should be kind of keying in on to upgrade as the weeks go by here. Very curious to hear your opinions as always. And make sure to like and subscribe below on the YouTube channel for daily updates as always. Really hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Make sure to enjoy the rest of your day. And we'll catch you guys on the next one.